In the often turbulent world of state politics, some figures rise not through blistering rhetoric or partisan warfare, but through a steady, determined commitment to the people they serve. Melissa Hortman was one of those leaders. First elected to the Minnesota House of Representatives in 2004, she represented her community of Brooklyn Park and Coon Rapids with a quiet strength that would eventually propel her to the highest position in the chamber. Her journey was not one of sudden meteoric ascent, but of gradual, earned trust. She built her career brick by brick, law by law, focusing on the intricate details of governance and the real-world impact of legislation. Her colleagues on both sides of the aisle came to know her as a lawmaker who valued substance over spectacle and results over rhetoric. Hortman's early life and career laid the foundation for the pragmatic leader she would become. A graduate of the University of Minnesota Law School, she brought an attorney's precision and a deep respect for process to the state capitol. Before her election, she worked as a lawyer, honing the skills of negotiation, analysis, and careful argumentation that would define her legislative style. This background instilled in her a profound understanding that effective government isn't about grand gestures alone. It's about the painstaking work of crafting sound policy, building coalitions, and ensuring that every voice is heard. She entered public service not to chase headlines but to solve problems, a mission she pursued with unwavering dedication for 2 decades. Her leadership style was characterized by a rare combination of firmness and inclusivity. When she was elected Speaker of the Minnesota House in 2019, she took the gavel with a promise to foster a more open and collaborative environment. She believed that the best ideas could come from anywhere, and that partisan affiliation should never be a barrier to good governance. Speaker Hortman made it a priority to empower her fellow lawmakers, encouraging robust debate while insisting on mutual respect. She was known for her marathon floor sessions and her meticulous management of the legislative calendar, ensuring that every bill received a fair hearing, and that the process itself was transparent and accountable to the public. This approach was not just a matter of personal preference, it was a core tenet of her political philosophy. Hortman understood that the legitimacy of democratic institutions depends on the public's faith in their fairness and accessibility. She worked to demystify the legislative process, making government more understandable for the average Minnesotan. Her tenure as Speaker was marked by a commitment to procedural integrity, a value that earned her respect, even from her staunchest political opponents. She was a leader who led not by command but by consensus, patiently building the bridges necessary to move the state forward, one deliberate step at a time. Melissa Hortman's legislative legacy is a testament to her deeply held belief that government can, and should, be a force for good in people's lives. Her policy priorities were not abstract ideals, but concrete solutions aimed at strengthening Minnesota's families and communities. At the forefront of her agenda was a passionate advocacy for early childhood education. She understood that investing in the state's youngest citizens was not just a social good, but a long-term economic imperative. She championed initiatives to expand access to high-quality preschool and childcare, arguing persuasively that a strong start in life is the single most effective way to close achievement gaps and build a more prosperous future for everyone. Healthcare was another cornerstone of her work. Hortman fought tirelessly to make healthcare more affordable and accessible for all Minnesotans, believing it to be a fundamental human right. She was a key architect of policies designed to lower prescription drug costs, protect people with pre-existing conditions, and strengthen the state's healthcare marketplace. Alongside these efforts, she was a determined advocate for common-sense gun safety measures. In a political climate where the issue is often fraught with division, she sought to find common ground, pushing for policies like universal background checks and red flag laws that were supported by a majority of Minnesotans, including many gun owners. Fiscal responsibility and government transparency were also central to the Hortman way. As Speaker, she presided over the state budget with a keen eye for detail and a commitment to sound financial management. She believed that the state's budget was a moral document, a reflection of its values and priorities. She worked to ensure that the budget process was open and accountable, making it easier for the public to see how their tax dollars were being spent. Her leadership was instrumental in passing balanced budgets that made critical investments in education, infrastructure, and healthcare, without placing an undue burden on future generations, earning her accolades for her steady fiscal stewardship. Protecting the rights of all Minnesotans was the thread that connected all of her policy work. She was a staunch defender of reproductive freedom, LGBTQ+ rights and voting rights, viewing them as essential to a just and equitable society. She championed legislation that codified these protections into state law, creating a firewall against attempts to erode them. For her efforts, she was recognized with numerous awards from advocacy groups who saw her as a reliable and powerful ally. Her reputation was that of a bridge builder, a leader who could bring people together to achieve meaningful progress, even on the most contentious issues of the day. The morning of June 14, 2025 began like any other Saturday in the quiet suburbs of Minneapolis. But the peace was shattered by an act of political violence that would send shockwaves across the state and the nation. In a meticulously planned and targeted attack, an assailant disguised as a police officer arrived at the Brooklyn Park home of Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. Under this deceptive guise, the gunman gained entry and carried out what Governor Tim Walz would later describe as a politically motivated assassination. Both Melissa and Mark Hortman were fatally shot, their lives cut short by an act of extremist hatred that struck at the very heart of Minnesota's democracy. The horror of that morning was not confined to a single location. Earlier, the same assailant had targeted another Democratic lawmaker, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, at their home in the nearby city of Champlin. The Hoffmans were both shot multiple times but miraculously survived the brutal attack, undergoing emergency surgery and beginning a long road to recovery. The coordinated nature of the assaults left no doubt as to their intent. This was not a random act of violence, it was a calculated strike against elected officials, designed to intimidate and terrorize those who participate in the democratic process. Law enforcement immediately launched a massive manhunt, and an entire community was placed on high alert. The news of the attack sent a wave of grief and disbelief through Minnesota. Leaders from across the political spectrum, from Governor Walz to President Donald Trump, swiftly condemned the violence. In a moment of national mourning, partisan divisions momentarily faded, replaced by a shared sense of outrage and sorrow. Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI pledged the full resources of the federal government to bring the perpetrator to justice. The attacks were a stark and tragic reminder of the rising tide of political extremism in the country, a threat that had now claimed one of Minnesota's most respected public servants. In the immediate aftermath, the focus turned to public safety and the security of elected officials. Security measures at the state capitol and for lawmakers across the state were immediately heightened. The tragedy also cast a dark shadow over planned protests and a military parade scheduled for the same day, marking the United States Army's 250th anniversary. As the state reeled from the loss, a profound and unsettling question hung in the air. How could this happen? The assassination of a sitting Speaker of the House was an unprecedented assault on the state's institutions, leaving a deep wound that would take years to heal. The assassination of Melissa Hortman left an indelible scar on the political landscape of Minnesota. The loss of a leader known for her ability to foster civility and cooperation was felt with acute pain in a time of deep national division. Her empty chair in the House chamber became a powerful symbol of the stakes involved in our political discourse. The attack forced a difficult and necessary conversation about the safety of public officials and the corrosive effects of violent rhetoric. In the weeks and months that followed, lawmakers grappled not only with the grief of losing a friend and colleague, but also with the challenge of governing in the shadow of such a horrific event. Yet, in the face of this tragedy, a spirit of civic resilience began to emerge. Hortman's colleagues, inspired by her memory, redoubled their commitment to the principles she championed. They vowed that her work would not be in vain, and that violence would not be allowed to silence the democratic process. Calls for unity and a return to respectful debate echoed through the halls of the Capitol. Many pointed to her leadership style, her emphasis on process, her willingness to listen, and her focus on common ground, as the necessary antidote to the poison of political extremism. Her legacy became a rallying cry for those determined to protect the institutions she so dearly loved. Melissa Hortman's story serves as a poignant reminder of the personal sacrifices made by those who enter public service. She was not just a politician, she was a mother, a wife, a neighbor, and a dedicated public servant who believed in the power of government to improve people's lives. She worked not for fame or fortune, but out of a genuine desire to build a better Minnesota. Her life was a testament to the idea that progress is possible when people of goodwill come together to solve problems. Her tragic death underscored the fragility of the democratic norms we often take for granted and the urgent need to defend them. Ultimately, Melissa Hortman's legacy is one of courage, integrity, and unwavering dedication to the common good. It is a legacy that challenges us all to engage in our democracy with the same spirit of constructive purpose that defined her life. It calls on us to reject the politics of division and embrace the hard work of building consensus. While her voice has been silenced, her example endures as a beacon for future generations of leaders in Minnesota and beyond. Her story matters not just because of how she died, but because of how she lived as a builder, a unifier, and a true champion for the people.